You want a new life, yet you still see everything through the eyes of your old self. It's like trying to see a new reflection in a broken mirror. No matter how badly you want change, the image staring back is always distorted by memories, wounds, and the perceptions of who you used to be. And this is where the paradox of transformation lies. It doesn't start on the outside. It starts with the gaze, with the way you see the world, yourself, and the possibilities around you. You can change your habits, your goals, your environment, but if you continue observing life with the same mindset that created the reality you're trying to leave behind, nothing truly changes. Your life is a direct reflection of your inner observer. That consciousness that interprets, feels, and reacts to what it sees. It's this observer that emits the frequency. It's this observer that shapes your reality. And as long as this observer is still vibrating in fear, scarcity, control, or distrust, the new reality has no space to emerge. Observation creates. Observation sustains. Observation is the bridge between you and the life you long to live. In this video, we'll uncover how true change happens when you learn to observe reality no longer as someone still fighting, but as someone already free, already abundant, already whole. Because it's only when the gaze shifts that everything shifts. Why life repeats itself even when you change habits. Have you noticed how, even after adopting new habits, setting different goals, and changing your behaviors, life somehow keeps looping back to the same place? As if, no matter how much you try to evolve externally, something invisible keeps pulling you back into an old familiar pattern. That's because real change doesn't happen on the surface. It doesn't settle through action alone. It needs a new consciousness observing those actions. Most people believe that changing what they do is enough to change what they experience. So they begin a new cycle, waking up earlier, taking care of their body, setting goals, getting organized, trying to be more positive. And for a while they feel a small shift. But soon the same frustration returns, the same insecurities, the same emotional triggers, the same results, disguised as something new, show up again. It's like painting an old wall with fresh paint without first fixing the cracks. Sooner or later, the old seeps through. That happens because the habits changed, but the inner observer, the one who sees the world and interprets life, remain the same. And that observer carries the vibration of your current identity. If that identity is still rooted in scarcity, fear, doubt, attachment to the past, or the need for control, then it will observe reality from that place. It will focus on what's missing, what might go wrong, what threatens, what limits. And when you observe this way, even unconsciously, you emit energetic signals that reinforce exactly what you no longer want to live. That's why life repeats itself, because your vibrational signature, even with new actions, is still anchored in the old pattern. You want more abundance, but still see the world through the eyes of someone afraid to lose. You want more love, but still interpret others' gestures with suspicion. You want to live your purpose, but view challenges as proof that you're not capable. Your outer reality responds to the way you position yourself internally in relation to it. And this way of observing is subtle, yet incredibly powerful. Because the mind, even when behaving differently, tends to maintain the same interpretive filters until identity changes. It's like your old self is still sitting in the command chair, analyzing the present through the lens of the past. And in that scenario, no matter how many new decisions you make, life will find a way to return to the same old script. So the change must go beyond practice. It must reach the origin point, the observer. And this isn't about pretending you've changed or trying to force positive thoughts. It's about cultivating a new state of being, a new gaze that starts from within and gradually transforms the way you feel, perceive, and react. When the observer changes, what is observed changes too. Because it's through your perception that you interact with the field of infinite possibilities. Quantum physics has already shown us that the observer influences the behavior of observed reality. This isn't just a spiritual metaphor. It's a deep understanding of how the universe works. Your consciousness shapes the experiences that unfold before you, And as long as you continue looking at life through the eyes of your old self, reality will keep responding the same way. It takes more than acting differently. It takes observing differently. Observation is the energetic signature of identity. The way you observe the world reveals far more about who you are than you might think. Before you act, speak, or decide, there's something subtler that radiates from you, the way you interpret everything around you. And this observation is not neutral. It carries a vibration that reveals your current identity, your inner state, your energetic signature. Every person carries within them an observer, an invisible lens shaped by experiences, beliefs, emotions, and memories. That lens defines what you see, how you feel about what you see, and what it all means to you. Two people can face the same situation and yet respond in completely different ways because their observers are aligned with different identities. And that's why, when your inner identity shifts, the world you perceive begins to shift as well. Think about it. The abundant version of you observes the world with confidence, sees opportunity where you once saw risk, feels secure where there once was lack. That version picks up on positive signs, recognizes synchronicities, and interprets events with clarity and hope. But the limited version of you, still identified with fear, pain, or scarcity, sees the world as a hostile place, full of obstacles, uncertainties, and threats. And that's not just a difference in thought. It's a difference in frequency, a difference in being. Your observation is, in truth, the living expression of your vibrational identity. When you change who you believe you are, you change what you perceive. When you change what you perceive, you change how you feel, and how you feel directly affects what you emit. That's how you begin to co-create reality from the inside out, because the universe responds to your vibrational field, not just to what you consciously desire. This is where many people get lost on the path of transformation. They believe they need to try harder to think differently, act differently, speak new affirmations. But if the observer behind it all remains the same, no matter how hard you try, the vibration doesn't change. And if the vibration doesn't change, the reality stays the same. Because it's not behavior that manifests, it's the consciousness behind it. You keep attracting the same life because you keep observing yourself in the same way. You look to the future still carrying the weight of the past. You interpret new opportunities with old fears. You evaluate your choices from the insecurity of someone who still doubts their worth. And that's how you reinforce the same reality day after day without even realizing it. But when identity begins to shift, your gaze shifts with it. And this new gaze is lighter, more curious, more confident. It's no longer searching for proof that something might go wrong, but open to signs that everything is flowing in your favor. This gaze doesn't cling to what's missing, it aligns with what's emerging. And little by little, this new way of observing begins to emit a new energetic signature, a frequency the universe recognizes, a vibration that calls in new experiences. That's why you must never underestimate the power of how you observe. It's not just about paying attention, it's about feeling, interpreting, reacting, and vibrating from a new inner center. Your identity is being expressed every second through the way you see the world. And as long as you keep observing through the same lens, you'll inevitably keep creating the same results. How to change the way you observe without faking or forcing. Changing how you observe life doesn't mean pretending everything's fine when it's not. It's not about forcing positive thoughts or suppressing uncomfortable emotions. True change in your gaze doesn't happen on the surface. It takes place in deeper layers, where your consciousness begins to break free from old conditioning and slowly steps into a new vibrational stance. And this process doesn't ask you to lie to yourself. It invites you to see reality with more presence, intention, and energetic maturity. Most people believe they can only start observing differently once everything around them gets better. They wait for external change before shifting their perception. But the truth is, the order is reversed. The new reality begins to manifest when you start observing it from the identity you wish to embody. And that requires a kind of internal training, not to force something artificial, but to hold a new perspective with authenticity. It's not about denying what you feel. If fear is present, it must be acknowledged. If doubt arises, it must be heard. But what defines your vibrational signature isn't whether or not you feel difficult emotions. It's the internal position from which you choose to observe them. Expanded consciousness doesn't eliminate pain. It observes it with more space. The new identity doesn't ignore difficulties. It sees them from a place that is no longer enslaved by them. A powerful and sincere way to begin this transition is by asking yourself one simple, transformative question. How does the fulfilled version of me observe this moment? This question doesn't require you to be that version just yet. It simply invites your awareness to access that perspective, even if only for a few seconds. And in that brief instant, something shifts. Your breath changes, your posture changes, your vibration changes, because you step out of automatic identification with the old and start to experience the new, even if subtly. This isn't make-believe, it's vibrational training. It's like teaching your mind to step out of its habitual interpretive patterns and open new circuits of perception. With repetition, this movement builds a bridge between who you are today and who you're becoming. And over time, that bridge strengthens. The new way of observing stops being an effort and becomes natural, organic, aligned. It's important to understand that the mind has been conditioned to observe life reactively. It looks for what's wrong, what might fail, what poses a threat. That pattern served survival at some point, but it no longer serves when your goal is to create from consciousness. That's why changing your gaze requires gentleness and repetition, not to suppress the old, but to show your mind there is another way to see. Lighter, clearer, more confident. Observing differently isn't self-deception, it's self-remembrance. Remembering your power, your essence, your ability to choose. It's saying to yourself, with presence, even if I still feel fear, I can look with confidence. Even if I don't yet see the results, I can observe with gratitude. Even if the outer world still looks the same, I can begin to train it from my new state of being. That is the alchemy of transformation. You begin to see with the eyes of the future, even while the present still holds traces of the past. And in that process, you don't just change what you see, you change who you are while seeing. And that, more than any technique, is what reprograms your vibration and redefines your existence. The Future Observer Technique. There's a simple, yet incredibly powerful technique that can transform the way you live. Observing reality as if you were already the future version of yourself you aspire to become. When practiced with intention and consistency, this shifts your vibration, your perception, and inevitably, the results you manifest. This is what we call the Future Observer Technique, a consciousness training that invites you to step out of the identity shaped by the past and, in the present, position yourself as someone already aligned with what you want to experience. It all begins with clarity, not clarity about what you want to achieve, but about who you need to become for that reality to be possible. Instead of focusing solely on goals, focus on identity. Who are you when you're already living in abundance? Who are you when you already feel secure, confident, loved, whole? That version of you exists within, not as a distant fantasy, but as a frequency already available in the field, waiting to be accessed by your awareness. The human mind tends to observe the present through the lens of past memories. It's an automatic response. It interprets the now through the references it has gathered, the traumas it has lived, the stories it has told itself. That's why, even when faced with something new, you often see the old. You see scarcity where there's potential, threat where there's growth, failure where there's a fresh start. The future observer breaks this cycle. It doesn't ignore the present, it reinterprets it from a higher state of awareness. By adopting this technique, you begin each day by connecting with the identity you wish to embody. Not as a character trying to fake it, but as someone training the mind and body to recognize a new state of being. You wake up and ask yourself, what does this version of me see when they open their eyes? How do they perceive this new day? That question alone starts to adjust your vibration. Your breathing shifts, your focus shifts, your nervous system responds differently. You're no longer being pulled by circumstance, you're stepping into the role of creator. As the day unfolds, this practice becomes a kind of internal radar. In every situation, you pause and ask, how does the future version of me observe what's happening right now? That simple shift in perspective opens space between stimulus and reaction. And in that space, you find choices that used to feel invisible. You respond to challenges with more presence. You see problems with broader vision. You welcome doubt with more calm, and that changes everything. Imagine a situation involving money. The limited version of you looks at the bank account and feels fear, scarcity, anxiety. The future version observes the same numbers with calm, not because it ignores reality, but because it knows those numbers don't define who they are. It sees beyond. It understands that this is just a temporary reflection and chooses to focus on possibility. That choice changes how it feels, and what it feels changes what it attracts. Or take love. Someone longing for a healthy relationship, but still observing interactions with distrust, expecting rejection, continues to recreate the same loneliness. The future observer approaches with openness, authenticity, and inner security. They don't rely on another to feel whole, and it's that vibrational integrity that invites true love to appear. This technique doesn't demand perfection, it demands presence, a daily commitment to refocus, to remember many times throughout the day who you are becoming. Even if the world hasn't caught up to that change yet, you keep observing through the eyes of your future self, because you know it's that observation that is shaping your new reality, little by little. The danger of observing through the residue of the past. One of the greatest obstacles on the path of transformation is the unconscious habit of observing life through the residue of the past. Even when you make new decisions, choose different paths, and commit to change, you may still be carrying old lenses. Lenses marked by pain, trauma, frustration, and beliefs that no longer reflect who you want to become. And the problem isn't just in what you've lived, it's in how those experiences continue to silently shape the way you interpret the present. These residues aren't just memories, they're vibrational states stored in the body, mind, and energetic field. They are unprocessed emotions that form subtle yet powerful filters, influencing what you see, how you feel about what you see, and most importantly, what you believe is possible. When you don't recognize these patterns, you end up reacting to the present as if you were still living in the past. And in doing so, you recreate the same reality, just wearing a new disguise. Imagine someone who has been rejected multiple times. Even after partially healing, gaining insights, and wanting to experience a new kind of love, they may still approach new connections with fear of being left again. The gaze, still tied to the trauma, reads neutral signals as threats. Small gestures take on distorted meanings. The energy being emitted is tinted by an unconscious expectation of pain, and inevitably that energy influences what unfolds. The same goes for someone who wants to prosper but has been conditioned for years to believe money is hard, scarce, or only comes through struggle. Even with effort to change habits, read books, or repeat affirmations, if their inner observer still views life through the lens of lack, their energy field will continue broadcasting the same frequency of limitation. That's what we call vibrational self-deception, wanting the new but still observing through the eyes of the old. This kind of observation is tricky because it's often subtle. You believe you're making progress, and in many ways, you are, but don't realize you're still seeing life through unhealed layers. And that's when life seems stuck. Opportunities don't flow, the same patterns keep showing up, and progress feels slow or even illusory. The most frustrating part is that, rationally, you know you're doing everything right, but energetically, you're still vibrating out of alignment with what you truly want to live. You can't live a new reality while looking through the eyes of old pain. That sentence must be felt, not just understood, because as long as your observation is rooted in unintegrated wounds, it will continue projecting those wounds into the future. And no matter how many changes you make, in your job, your relationships, your city, the pattern follows. What hasn't been healed within will always return outside. That's why it's essential to bring presence and honesty into the process, to recognize where pain still lingers, where fear still lives, where you're still holding on to old stories, not to judge yourself, but to set yourself free. Every time you notice yourself observing through the lens of the past, you have a chance to pause and choose a new vantage point. Not to deny what you feel, but to no longer let it lead you. That choice of presence changes everything. You can tell yourself, yes, I still feel fear here, but I choose to look with more trust. Yes, this situation reminds me of something painful, but I am not the same person I once was. When you do that, you begin to dissolve the residue. You begin to clear the lens. You begin to allow your new identity to take command of your observation. To observe through the eyes of the present is an act of courage. It's releasing the comfort of the familiar, even when that familiar is uncomfortable. It's making space for the new to actually happen, not just as an idea, but as a living vibration. And that only becomes possible when you commit to seeing life with updated eyes. Align not with who you've been, but with who you're becoming. How the universe recognizes your new observation. The universe doesn't respond to what you say you want. It responds to who you are at your core, and your essence is expressed moment by moment through the way you observe life. Observation, though it may seem like a passive act, is in fact an active vibrational process. It carries an energetic signature that communicates to the universal field exactly what frequency you're tuned into. And from that frequency, reality begins to reorganize itself around you. When you observe the world through the eyes of your new identity, even if that identity is still being formed, something starts to shift in ways that are almost imperceptible, yet deeply real. Your thoughts begin to take on a different tone. Your emotions gain a new quality. Your decisions start to align more closely with what you truly want to live. And that vibrational coherence is what the universe recognizes as a clear signal of readiness. It's not how much you want something that brings about change. It's how much you're resonating with the reality you desire. And to be in resonance means to observe life as someone who already feels worthy, capable, and connected to what they long to experience. This doesn't require perfection. It requires consistency. The universe responds to the authenticity of your internal state, not to declarations you repeat without feeling. It responds to the silent alignment between what you see, what you feel, and what you emit. As you begin to sustain this new way of observing, even for brief moments throughout the day, you start broadcasting a different frequency into the field. And it's on that frequency that the universe moves. It's from there that doors begin to open, unexpected encounters unfold, new ideas emerge, synchronicities become more frequent. Not because you're being rewarded for effort, but because you finally aligned with a reality that already existed as potential. What changed was how you engaged with it. Often, the first sign that the universe has recognized your new observation isn't a dramatic external shift, but a subtle internal one. A lightness that wasn't there before, a quiet where once there was mental noise, a sudden clarity. These small signs are vibrational adjustments, indicators that your new identity is beginning to solidify. And from there, outer movement naturally follows. You'll also start to notice people responding to you differently. Conversations become deeper. Opportunities arise more fluidly. Even challenges are met with more presence and less resistance. Because you're no longer seeing life through the same old lens that once distorted everything around you. Your elevated observation invites elevated responses from reality. The universe is responsive, but not linear. It doesn't operate on a system of effort versus reward. It follows the logic of frequency, and that frequency is largely shaped by the way you perceive and interpret your experience. When you change your observation, you don't just shift how you see the world. You shift the point from which your vibration is emitted. And with that, you begin moving through realities that are compatible with your new frequency. It's important to remember that even when nothing seems to be changing on the outside, if you continue observing through the eyes of your future self, transformation is happening on the inside. And those internal shifts are the foundation of true manifestation. Because a solid reality can only sustain itself when it's born from a solid frequency. And that frequency is born from coherence between your intention and your perception. We've come to the end of this journey, but perhaps it's only the beginning of a new way of seeing. Now you know, it's not what you do, but how you observe the world that shapes the reality that unfolds. You don't attract what you want. You attract what aligns with how you perceive, feel, and position yourself in relation to life. Transformation begins when the observer changes, and it's in that quiet space between consciousness and perception that the new begins to take form. So here's a challenge. For the next 24 hours, observe everything around you as if you were already the version of yourself you're becoming. Feel how they would see, how they would respond, how they would interpret what happens. Then tell me, what changed? Change doesn't require the world to shift first. It asks you to change the way you see. Because when you see differently, you become different. And when you become different, the entire world begins to respond in a whole new way.